Thanks for joining us on this presentation about Pick 6 for Conway. If you're watching, you're probably looking for information about the November 18th sales tax election. But if you didn't know, we're having a sales tax election November 18th and early voting starts November 12th. During this presentation, I want to give you a quick review of sales tax municipal finance in Arkansas, tell you why we're talking about this now, and what voters will see when they go into the ballot on November 18th. In Arkansas, when you talk about city services, what a city is able to build and maintain, you're talking about sales tax collections. There are other funds that help fund city government. When you get a building permit, you pay a fee. But that's not how the services get delivered, the things get built, and the things get maintained. Those are reliant on sales tax collections, whether they go up or whether they go down. Why are we talking about this now? What's changed? A lot has changed. There is a disruption taking place in our sales tax economy. You normally don't like to talk about disruption and public finance in the same sentence, but it's happening, and we can either confront it and plan for it, or we can live with the consequences. And finally, what will voters see on November 18th? What decision are we making? Well, voters are going to see 6 questions. They're going to see a question that will allow us to establish a public safety capital fund, to let us budget for major multi-million-dollar purchases that can show up as fast as a truck can break down. They're going to help us reestablish a street and drainage maintenance fund so we can continue to overlay streets and repair drainage or build drainage infrastructure. And we're also going to see 4 projects that will grow our tax base and improve our quality of life. Jumping into a review of sales tax. So when we talk about paying taxes and services from city government, there's quantitative. I mean, it's taxes, it's a number. And so we're going to look at how Conway compares to local sales taxes, collections compared to their peers. And then we're going to look at what's happening to those numbers with the disruption that's taking place in the sales tax economy. But tax policy, city government, and the services they provide are not just about numbers. They're about outcomes. And the bullet points here on the right-hand slide really represent the perspective that we'll bring to the table for this presentation. We think that how your tax dollars are spent matters, and we think that, yes, consider the economic impact, but the resident benefit. You can't cost benefit everything. Public safety, how much you enjoy the city you live in, raise your children in, hope to bring them back to. Those aren't things that you decide with a calculator. We believe that some projects and programs can grow a tax base. You can build the types of things that attract visitors, facilitate new business, and it's $1 in and $1+ out. And finally, we think that funding essential services and infrastructure is where you start, not where you stop. This is a bit of a values statement, but it's a value that we've borrowed from the workplace, the classroom, teams that we've been on. It's not enough to just show up on time at dress code with your pencil. That's where the learning starts. That's where your day begins. But you also have to be creative and you curious and you have to put in effort. That's when you get your best results. And we think that people and places are obligated to pursue their potential, and Conway has a ton of potential. So let's take a look at this sales tax chart and how we compare to our peers. These are the 20 largest cities in Arkansas. This is the local sales tax rate. That's a combination of city and county. And so this is the number that fluctuates depending where you make your purchase. Everyone pays Arkansas sales tax, but where you make your purchase, the rate changes depending on what those cities have decided to collect. If you're having a hard time finding Conway because you're not used to looking at the bottom of a list and seeing Conway, we are at the bottom of this one. We're 18th out of the 20 largest cities. However, if you pull back and look at all of the cities in Arkansas, we're like 298th out of 349 cities. So well below the median for the largest cities and even further below the median for all of the cities in Arkansas. Now, you may be asking yourself, is this a case of, well, sure, one tax is lower here, but another tax is higher? So we looked at property taxes, and of the top 20 cities in Arkansas, we're 17th on property tax. And so we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, or there's no bait and switch on tax. If the words high and low still have meaning, Conway has low local taxes. Now, property taxes primarily fund public education. Overwhelmingly, those proceeds go to public education. However, when it's coming out of your pocketbook, it all feels the same. So we go back and we look at where Little Rock, they have a lower sales tax than us. But when you consider property taxes, their property taxes are 40% higher. The property taxes that go to local needs, the city of Little Rock, are 400% higher. So if you pay $1,000 in property tax in Conway, you're going to pay $1,400 in Little Rock. So again, Conway, with regard to local taxes, it is objectively a low tax climate. However, taxes, particularly sales taxes, it's not just about the rate. It's not what you decide to collect. It's also about the base, and that's who pays. And who pays sales taxes in your city is made up of your trade area plus visitors. So it's the people who come into town to work every day. It's the people who come in for health care. Obviously, for shopping, they're paying those sales taxes. But we're on Interstate 40, which is kind of America's main street now. And we have visitors from around the country who are driving through. And we're currently choosing to collect at a really low sales tax rate. This base question is also important because right now, more than 60% of the revenue we bring in from sales tax is paid by non-residents. So this is, again, it's not about who pays as much as it's about how much do we collect, or how much do we pay, how much do we collect. The other thing with base, where they pay can change. And we're about to dive into that. The sales tax economy is being rapidly disrupted. And there's 3 reasons that's taking place. Changes in the regional brick and mortar retail landscape. You can look at 2004 and 2005 in Conway. We built Conway Commons, and it changed our sales tax economy. We brought national big boxes to Conway. Previously, we were going into the MSA Central City, Little Rock, or North Little Rock for those stores. When they came here, we saw a spike in sales tax collections because those stores had never been available in a community of our size. Fast forward 20 years, those stores are responding to changes in the economy. They're coming out with smaller footprint models, and they're going into communities like Searcy and Russellville that exist within our trade area. So we can go back. Searcy opens an Academy Sports this year. We look at the sales tax collections from sporting goods. And as soon as Searcy opens their Academy Sports, we watch our collections from sporting goods nosedive. And then we look at Sherwood, which is twice as close to that store, and theirs go down even further and faster. Later this year, Searcy's going to open a Target. We will fill that. Those sales will come off of our plates. And then in the near future, Russellville's going to open an Academy Sports. It's not about sporting goods. It's about recognizing that when the brick and mortar retail landscape in your trade area changes, we will now see those decreases. We will live those out, just like other communities like Little Rock and North Little Rock lived them out in 2005 with Conway Commons. We've also witnessed the second reason, changes in regional visitor infrastructure. Now, Conway is still number 1 in youth team sports. Probably the 10 or 15 largest baseball tournaments are taking place here, softball tournaments. We still do very, very well in that space. But we can observe other communities building visitor infrastructure and amenities. We can look at Cabot. We can see new sporting facilities, new attractions, and we watch their hotel collections, and they go up. At the same time, our hotel collections are going down. And we are in the same economy as Cabot. Tariffs or inflation don't affect us differently than them. We can track what spiked their visits to new amenities. So when something in the trade area changes, it affects us. And finally, and one I think we all understand, is online shopping. Sales tax is collected at the point of delivery. So if you live just outside the city limits and you shop online and that product is delivered to your house, Conway is no longer collecting those sales taxes. I like to give the illustration, no one who lives in Greenbrier is going to get in their car and drive to Conway to buy a blender. They can go online and they can look at 100 blenders. They can price match and look for 100 different prices. Somebody somewhere has too many blenders and they're going to make a good deal on it. And they will make that order, and they may be in Conway when they buy it on their phone, and then it's on their porch when they get home. But even more than that, sometimes now shopping, people aren't making a conscious decision to shop. They're checking an email, they're returning a text message, and they just kind of end up shopping on their phone, and then that purchase is made. And again, this isn't just people in Russellville and Searcy and further away we're talking about. These are people who live on Lake Beaver Fork, which isn't in the city limits, or they live on one side of Sturgis Road, but not the other side of Sturgis Road. I'll give you a story. Someone in Faulkner County got their truck, got their trailer. They came to Conway. They're remodeling their property, and they make thousands of dollars in purchases. The tile that they want isn't available when they went to get it. And then they place an order, they go home, the tile shows up days later. They didn't have to pay Conway sales tax on that tile. And this is someone who intentionally made every effort to come and buy, but it just worked out to have it delivered. These aren't things we should be mad at. This is the natural course of business, but they're things that we do need to confront. And the other thing is, this isn't the business cycle. This is a shift. This is more like a decline in print advertising or increased automation in manufacturing. If your job was replaced with automation, you can't wait for it to come back. You have to look for a different kind of job. If you were selling, there was a month, a decade or more ago, where print ad sales started going down. They didn't rebound. That money moved. And if we do nothing, what is happening is going to continue. And what we see is that this year, Conway sales tax is flat, while other cities living in the same economy are experiencing some increases. So why bother? What control do we have over this? I just gave a little rant about a lot of this is out of our hands. Well, we want to talk about the city that we live in and kind of what it feels like and what it looks like. And we have more control than you might think. I think a lot of people think that the way a city looks and feels is like the weather. It's hot and humid here in the summertime, and there also isn't much to do. Or sometimes we have ice storms and severe weather, and our city also looks kind of blah. Well, we don't think that a city is like the weather. We think a city is more like a house. If you don't like something about your house, it will take time, effort, some headaches, some mess, but you can change it. We also think another comparison on the housing metaphor is that people invest in their homes for different reasons. You may see someone and they're remodeling their kitchen, and you ask why, and they're getting ready to list their house and they want it to be on the market for less time, or they want to get a higher price. But then you see another neighbor remodeling their kitchen. You say, hey, are you getting ready to sell your house? They look at you like you're crazy. They're like, no, we like to cook. We want to entertain. We're bringing our grandkids in for Christmas. And so you can fix up a city and look at it through a financial lens. What's the return? But you can also fix up your city and say, this is where we live. This is where my house is. And I want to enjoy it more. And just to ride this cable history horse or cable channel metaphor into the ground, why bother? Because it's tradition here. Since our founding, for 150 years, and this month is our 150th birthday, this community has been very intentional about growth and quality. We started by putting ads in a newspaper to recruit residents from other countries. We got on horseback and rode out into the county and counties nearby and asked people to bring their business here for the gins. We recruited colleges. We created a utility. We built 2 lakes. We adopted the progressive public policy. Many times we were the first city in the state to take advantage of it, and then others follow suit. But the moral is we've never been passive, not bothering to invest in ourselves and to meet our highest potential. That would be the change. Doing nothing would be a change in tradition. Also, we have the capacity to do something. And we think when you have the potential and you have the ability, you have the obligation. So let's look at this sales tax list. Look where we are and look where some of these other cities are. The space between 18 and 10 represents capacity. If we were at the top of this list, if I was in Cabot and said, hey, I have a grand vision for what Cabot can be, we just need to raise our sales tax another 3/4 of a cent, you should have serious pause about that. You would have an oddly high sales tax. You might even be beyond what state law allows, but that's not us. We have capacity. Here's another reason we should do something. We're not operating from a position of weakness. We got our highest ranking ever, first time we were ever ranked in U.S. News and World Report, best places to live. Back-to-back fastest growing city in Arkansas in 2022 and 2023. And we're in the middle of a great run on economic development, particularly with manufacturing. And this is why it's important to not operate from a position of weakness. If you go back to 1980 and you look at cities in America over 50,000, if they were losing population then, they're losing population now. There's one exception. I'll tell you about that in a second. But if you were losing population 40 years ago, you're still losing it now. And the people in those communities love their community just as much as the people in Conway do. They probably are working harder because they've tasted what stagnation and decline feels like, and they've seen it and they want to remedy it, but it's not working because the fact is, when you're trying to improve a city of real size, once the ball starts rolling down the hill at you, it's almost impossible to push it back up the hill. The one exception was Chattanooga, Tennessee. They were led by then Mayor Bob Corker, who went on to become U.S. Senator Bob Corker, and they did a community-wide strategic visioning process, and that's why we stole that process from them and did 2025 and Conway 2035. Which brings us to the other reason we should do something. The community's provided clear direction. In 2020, the city of Conway did a survey, and they listed all of the facets that go with living in a community. The one that got the lowest level of satisfaction was cultural, arts, and music activities. Now, that's not an indictment. I would much rather the lowest level of satisfaction be with cultural, arts, and music activities than public safety or the ability to get from point A to point B. These are the essentials. But the fact is, it's where we're least satisfied and maybe where the citizens have said, this is where we see an opportunity to improve ourselves. At that same time, we got surveys back from almost 2,000 Conway residents, and we asked the same question in a different way. We listed 42 topics, and we said, hey, indicate what topics should be included in the community strategic plan. Well, the one that got marked the most was arts, entertainment, and culture. Same question, asked different ways, same conclusion. And we think when you ask a community, what do we need to be working on? And they tell you, that's what you need to be working on. So we've established that Conway has the capacity to do something. We've established that we're not working from a position of weakness, so we have the ability to do something. And then we've been given clear direction by the community on what to do. So let's go to this slide. Let's look at those cities. We were asked to imagine what is possible if we collected just the median rate among our peers. And you see them highlighted here at 3 cents. And so that is also, if you have a student in middle school or junior high, that's the mode rate. It's the most frequently occurring number in that data set. And we're at 2.25 cents. So that represents a 3/4 cent increase for us to join our peers with the median rate. What would that feel like when you spend? It would feel like an additional 75 cents on every $100 of spending. So if we collect the median rate, we could have a public safety capital fund. This would be a 1/4 cent tax that you would vote on. It's the first thing you'll see when you go and vote. And it will generate immediately $5 million per year for major capital purchases. Currently, those purchases come out of the general fund. They come out of the same bucket that we pay our employees with, that we really run city government with. But right now, our plan is to hope that a $2 million fire truck doesn't need replaced the same time that shopping has gone down. And that's not a plan. And so when we have to make those decisions about, do we replace a critical piece of firefighting equipment, or do we add positions, give raises, meet the other needs of the city? It's a very difficult decision for the city council to make, but it's one that's made for you by circumstances, and you have to replace the equipment first. The police department, a fully outfitted police car in 2026 is $100,000, not just for the vehicle meeting the safety specs and all the things that go into that, but also the technology that travels with every officer. And then communications technology is a never-ending cycle of keeping up with the latest and most secure technology. All of these things are essential. We're meeting those needs now, but they're coming out of the same general fund that all of our other services and amenities and the things that we build and maintain come out of. This replaces that. This gives it a line item, and it gives not only our city council and city government the ability to budget, it gives the heads of these departments the ability to budget and plan. The next thing this would do, the second question you'll see, is establish a street maintenance fund, or a fund for streets and drainage. You may not be aware that just over 2 years ago, we were collecting an additional 3/8 cent. That 3/8 cent sales tax was for streets, and it was allowed to expire. So sales taxes in Conway went down a little over 2 years ago. You probably didn't notice. But when you cut costs by reducing or eliminating maintenance, you're not really saving money. You're costing yourself money. So what this would do is replace a third of that fund, and it would allow us to have a fund to address critical drainage needs and continue an overlay program that we've obviously benefited from. I mean, drive around and you see, when you see a newly paved street, it's because of overlay programs. And those aren't just nice looking streets. You've added years to the life of that street without having to do a full reconstruction, which takes much longer and costs much more. So those first two questions, if Conway collected the median rate, we could do those first two questions. That would represent 3/8 of a penny to protect and pave. So get ready. Here's what happens to this chart if we pass the first two questions. It goes from here to here. That's not a big change. I think we can handle it. I don't think anyone will notice. However, as we mentioned before, that's our essential services and infrastructure. That's where you start. That's not where you stop. We're at school on time. We've got our pen and paper or your Chromebook, whatever, and we're at dress code. But now let's get started. And by the way, we've done nothing to address the base. So if we pass those things, we'll have a better city, but no one's going to drive here from Searcy or Russellville or the rest of the state to look at our new fire truck or to look at a box culvert that's solving a drainage problem. It does nothing to address the question of where they pay, where they spend. So let's talk about what projects can grow our tax base, what projects can invite those visitors and their money in. When we looked at these projects and established a budget, we made these assumptions on the left-hand column that 3/8 of a penny will finance approximately $100 million in proceeds. That's assuming the bonds are issued for 30 years at 4.5% interest. A municipal bond, it's just like a loan. And so you borrow the money and you pledge, in this case, 3/8 of a cent in sales tax revenue to pay it back. And once you pay it back, that tax expires. The loan is paid off and the tax goes away. These projects met 3 criteria. They will attract visitors. They have zero net impact on general fund expenses. That's the problem we're trying to solve, not a problem we want to contribute to. And finally, they're aligned with community surveys and strategic plans. The first one is the Central Arkansas Amphitheater. If you're at all familiar with the AMP in Rogers, this is that with 1,000 more seats, more covered seats in a market that's 20% larger. So when you're imagining the shows right now that you've seen at the AMP, imagine those shows and then some shows that market is too small to attract. There will be artists who are large enough to say no to the AMP, but yes to this facility. One of the most important features in all of these projects is that they will be operated by a qualified third party. This will not be a city government enterprise. It will not be a chamber of commerce enterprise. It'll be national venue managers who work in that space and who have experience and who have a network to book this venue and others. When you look at this, you see 200,000 visitors in year one for 24 promoted shows. A promoted show is probably the show that you're thinking about. It's the type of show that you go on Ticketmaster and buy a ticket for. It's not the only event that will take place there. I would imagine this facility hosting high school graduations or Easter sunrise service, entertainment events that are more local in nature. But when we talk about what is driving new revenue into this economy, it's going to be those promoted shows. And when we're to a full calendar of 32 promoted shows, we go up to 350,000 visitors per year and $44 million in direct spending. The next one is the Lake Conway North Shore Boardwalk. Now, I think this is a case where the longer you've been here, maybe the less you think about Lake Conway. A lot of people think Lake Conway is in Mayflower. It's actually behind Academy Sports and Sam's Club. This is a boardwalk. This is a visitor amenity on the North Shore. And it's primarily, most of the proceeds from this will go into this boardwalk infrastructure. It's a floating boardwalk. It's not actually floating. It's floating like a floating shelf, but it's about 18 inches above the water and really designed. We want to design this where if you show up in the wrong shoes with a baby stroller, you could still find yourself 1,000 feet into a cypress glade. This is a unique opportunity. That's what will make it attractive. This is our Pinnacle Mountain. No one has ever climbed Pinnacle Mountain and not taken a selfie. People look for things. They crave things to do on the weekends and with their kids. We benchmarked this off of there's similar infrastructure, smaller in scale at a park, Osage Park in Northwest Arkansas. And we were there the first warm Saturday in February and saw 3 groups of people there who had price tags on their fishing equipment. That's the audience. But we also have the opportunity to partner with some great partners at the state level to really expand that network, to expand that audience and have programmed visitors. So integrating Game and Fish, their educational network with this facility. Keep in mind, Game and Fish is also one of the state's largest law enforcement agencies, and their academy is on Lake Conway. They're committed to seeing this staff. The Office of Outdoor Recreation is committed to being a partner in the success and promotion of this. And that estimated 50,000 visitors per year did not come from us, came from those folks who have generations of data on what drives outdoor visits. And just so you can further kind of acquaint yourself with the location, it's this shaded area here. It would be, if you're driving in to Conway from the south, it would be the last piece of Lake Conway you see on your right off of the interstate. This line on Stone Dam Creek, it's not included in this proposal, but it is fun to think about, and it does not take a huge imagination, a huge sum of money or planning to create a scenario where someone could put a kayak in at Andy's next to the pedestrian overpass and paddle into Lake Conway. That's not part of this vision, but it's definitely part of my vision. And it's fun to think about just where things could go. And, I'll just say this, something like that, something like putting in your kayak at Andy's and paddling into Lake Conway is ridiculous and cool. And it's cool because it's ridiculous and people will come to do it. The next project is the Grand Theater. This is the building on the southwest corner of Oak and Chestnut. It was originally built as a theater in 1909. It was originally held 620 people. It's only a 320 seat venue when we restore it. That's because back then they did not have the modern fire codes or the refined sugar that we have. So we like to have a little more room in our theaters now. We require a little more room. But this will be a facility that will drive more than 20,000 new visitors into downtown Conway. There's a number of operating models possible. Again, this will not be a function of city government to operate this. It'll have experienced professionals who have run programs. But we looked at a theater in Franklin, Tennessee, where they have 1,000 events a year in this theater. And you may be wondering, how do you have 1,000 events a year when you don't have that many days? Well, when you build these correctly, you host a corporate event in the morning for recognition or for training. You have the lights and the AV and everything. And so you have people who want to create content and who want to film and take advantage of what you have on stage. One of the most popular series at that theater is a holiday movie series where just picture your favorite holiday movie. People want to see that movie with their family in a historic theater, in a downtown, with the tree, with the lights, with the shopping. It's a vibe, and people respond to it. And so, I have heard, well, why are you comparing us to Franklin, Tennessee? Well, because people here love Christmas and their family as much as people in Franklin, Tennessee. And frankly, you can look around the country and see historic theaters. You've probably been in one. You just didn't know that we had one here that was ready to be restored. And this will also be home to community groups. Our youth theater can host their productions there, but you don't have to care about any of that stuff to have an investment in the success of this theater, because if you care about having more restaurants downtown, having retailers be successful downtown or be open later, what we've seen when we look around the country is when you create an evening economy, you get those other things. So you benefit whether you ever walk through the doors or not. You benefit from the new restaurant, from the stores. And if you never go downtown for all of these projects, if you never use any of them, you benefit from outside revenue coming into your city. And then finally, the Conway Convention Center. Conway is the largest city in Arkansas without a convention center. And we currently no longer, there was a period of time where we were saying, no, we don't have the facilities to host this statewide conference or convention. We don't even get those requests anymore. Word is out. Conway is closed for business with regard to large meetings and conferences. This facility would be large enough to host any statewide conference or convention. One of the key factors is we would not build this. It's contingent upon a private, full-service, flagged hotel development being connected to it, and that's who the qualified third party would be. Whoever builds that hotel, operates it, has a track record, they're going to be the operator of your convention center. And we would also be getting 100 to 150 room full service hotel, the type of hotel we don't currently have in the market. We've got great hotels that meet our current needs, but when you move into convention space, you have a different suite of needs. And this is really going to be a partnership in operation and in property development with a private third party. So look at these 4 projects. We put them together. The financial impact, 320,000 visitors and $43 million in direct spending the first year, all All of them are open, maturing up to almost 500,000 visitors and 66 million in direct spending. That's the financial impact. Personally, I look forward to enjoying several of these as a resident. But again, let's go back to if Conway collected just the median rate, we could build best in the region quality of place amenities, and then we could also have our public safety capital needs met, budgeted for, planned for, and we could have a maintenance fund reestablished to have an overlay program and build critical drainage infrastructure. This is for paying and collecting the median rate. We could collect what the other cities are collecting, but we will have what the other cities don't have. That is a good deal. It is not the kind of deal that comes across very often. And finally, I would ask people to be thoughtful about where will Conway be in 10 years. We're headed somewhere. We know what's going on in the sales tax economy. We know what's going on within our region. We know what other cities look and feel like. And I think now we're confronted with the decision, what decisions and actions are most likely to create a city that attracts and retains the next generation. I like local government, local elections. I worked in that space. I think when we have elections like this, it's more like having the village come together in the gym or church and make a decision about what do we want to do, with our city than it is a presidential election. It's just one of the cool things. It's government at the smallest unit. It's the opportunity. The mayor and city council make a ton of decisions on our behalf, and then we hold them accountable in elections. But with elections like this, we get to decide how much tax do we collect. We get to decide what do we want to build? What kind of city do we want to live in? And then we just come together and do it. Now, we're too big a city to do that in a gym, so we're gonna vote. We're gonna use ballots and we'll have an election. But we're really just deciding, with each other, for each other, what's in our best interest. How do we honor the city that we inherited? What kind of city are we going to leave? And we're going to come together and make that decision. We're going to make that decision starting November 12th, and Election Day is November 18th. If you have any questions, you can visit pick6forconway.com. We've got a frequently asked questions page. Currently, I think there's 29 questions and answers on there. And you can we love getting new questions, and we'll add those to the list as we get them. Thank you for sitting through this presentation. If you made it this far, you obviously care a lot about your community. You care a lot about Conway. We thank you for that and look forward to making this decision with you.